So welcome back. We're going to do a different slant on circumference and area of circles. Sometimes they'll actually give us the circumference and area of the circle and they want us to maybe find the radius or the diameter. So we're going to look at some examples like that. So our first example is find the radius of each circle. Use your calculator's value of pi. Round each answer to the nearest tenth. So since we're doing circumference and we're looking for the radius, what I would suggest using is the formula that involves the circumference and the radius. So we write our formula down. C is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. From there, we have to replace what we know. They tell us what the circumference is, so that's going to replace our C. So 62.8 is going to equal then 2 times pi times the radius. And what we recognize is, since this is location, what I can do is actually work backwards to find what the radius is. But we know that the opposite location is actually division. So what I can do is, so say 2 pi r equals 62.8, I can actually then go 62.8, and I can actually divide it by that 2 pi. So we actually can work backwards and divide, and that will help me find what r is. So, letting our calculator do that work, we can go 62.8 divided by 2 pi. And we end up with a decimal number here. And we want to add to the nearest tenth, so again I'm going to go out to the hundredths place. So we have 98.64, and since I will round to the tenths place, instead of being 98 point, it's either going to be 98.6 or 98.7, but that 4 tells me to round down, so it's going to be 98.6. And we were dealing with miles, so the circumference would be, actually the radius is going to equal then, so the radius is going to equal then 98.6 miles. So let's see here. Does that make sense? 62.8. I don't think that's making much sense to me. Let's try that again. So 62.8 divided by, my calculator kind of made a boo-boo there. So let's try it again. So 62.8 divided by 2 pi, I actually had to put the 2 pi in parentheses there, and that gave me 9.99. That makes better sense. And we see that if I went around to the tenths place, that's actually going to change up to 10.0 miles. So our radius would be then 10.0 miles. That makes better sense if I round to the tenths place. So take note that that 2 pi had to actually be in parentheses for that to work. So let's see, find the diameter of each circle. Well, I'm dealing with the area. There's only one formula for the area, and that is area equals pi r squared. So the only thing I can do at this point is find the radius. So we know that we have the formula area equals pi r squared. We have also that the area is 4, so we have 4 equals pi r squared. And we can then get the r squared by itself by dividing by 4 pi. Dividing the 4 by pi. So I can actually work backwards and say divide. So that 4 divided by pi is going to actually equal r squared. So r squared is going to equal 4 divided by pi. Let's see what that is. That looks like that's going to be 1.27. So that's going to be approximately 1.3. r squared equals 1.3. Now, to actually find what r is, since we're doing squaring, we have to do the opposite operation of squaring, and we talked earlier that the opposite operation of squaring is actually the square root. So r would actually equal the square root of 1.3, and I have to find that information on the calculator as well. The square root symbol is on there, so we can type in the square root of 1.3, hit enter, and we end up with 1.14. So that's going to be approximately 1.1 for my radius, and that's going to be in inches. But notice how the question said find the diameter. Well, we know that the diameter is 2 to the radii, so I have to double that. So my diameter ends up being then 2.2 inches. Something requires a little creativity. We may have to do a little bit more with that in class. So we'll approach that one again at another time. Let's look at circumference equals 30 pi. So again, we do have a formula that involves diameter, which would be this one. So we're going to use the formula c equals pi times the diameter. The circumference is 30 pi, so I replace the c with 30 pi, and I end up with pi times diameter. And we know also that you can work backwards and use division to find what the diameter is. So the diameter is going to equal 30 pi divided by pi. We also can recognize the pi's are actually going to divide out this problem. And therefore, the diameter is going to be 30 yards. So 30 yards would be the diameter of that one. So circumference isn't so bad, but that power of 2 with area does create a little bit more work on that. So hopefully that will be a little helpful in some upcoming problems. Stay tuned.